because I was such, you know, I was so depressed, like to dangerous levels, like you got to worry about me levels. I didn't care about anything. Like it was the first time in my life where I gave up, and through giving up, I went to a tournament without caring much, without like, trying to control everything, and I went and won the damn thing. Like I won Fargo out of nowhere.
We can endure anything and adapt and pivot and change. Wrestling gave us that ability.
I would say nothing in life has impacted me more than the things wrestling has taught me in terms of self-reflection, resilience.
Toughness. Some guys have it, some guys don't.
Adversity, 100%. How to pick myself up and be a man after I failed.
And everything that has shaped my life and where I'm at today would not be there without the values and basically the lessons I've learned through the sport of wrestling.
For me, wrestling saved my life because it allowed me to focus and channel my energy.
We're fortunate if you wrestle, because if you wrestle, natural talent helps, but it's 5% of the ingredient. It pales in comparison to heart and technique and effort.
It humbled me, taught me humility. Nothing can humble you more than wrestling. I think it's the learning to adapt, right? You learn how to adapt, you learn how to solve problems.
If I look back at my time I spent wrestling, if it gave me one thing more than anything else, it's mental toughness.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Wrestling Changed My Life podcast, presented by Spartan Combat. This is your host, Ryan Warner. Happy Friday to you. We've been on the road all this week recording interviews for our next audio documentary that I can't announce yet, but I'll be announcing soon. And so I apologize for getting our second episode of the week out on Friday. We got Joe Rau on the show today. Joe is a Chicago legend. He's a multiple-time world team member for the Greco team, and he was just involved in a highly controversial match at the 2021 Olympic team trials. He was in the finals, and a travesty happened, folks. Go online, watch the match, see for yourself. And in this episode, we hear about Joe's background, we hear about his thoughts on that match, and what's next for the great Joe Rau. Folks, this episode is brought to you by the Spartan National Wrestling Championships going down in Jacksonville, Florida, May 20th through the 23rd. If you live in the Southeast or know someone who does, get this tournament in front of them. It's the first tournament that Spartan Combat's holding. Go to SpartanCombat.com to register. Fan of the Week goes to Devin out of Danville, Illinois, wrestling for Storm Youth Wrestling Club. He's a huge Spencer Lee fan and an avid wrestler in the IKWF circuit. Thanks for listening, Devin. We appreciate it. And that's it, folks. Let's get to the interview with the great Joe Rau. So you've had a crazy last month, but before we get to some of the current events, I got to know your story a little bit better, man. I grew up in Illinois. I've heard your name a ton. Kind of walk us through your introduction to wrestling and how you got to Elmhurst.
Yeah, so there's a lot of crazy stuff that happened in between those two moments, but I got into wrestling when I was 6 years old, and like a lot of good wrestlers, they got in around that age, but I didn't have a wrestling family. I'm actually a distant relative to Steve Marinetti. Like he's like my dad's second cousin or something. So I don't know what that makes me and him, but I didn't really know him. I only saw him once at a funeral. But I actually got into the wrestling because of my neighbor. I had a neighbor who was like a brother to me, and his dad was from Poland. And it's pretty crazy the way it all worked out. His dad got me into wrestling because I was always getting in fights and stuff over like basketball games and baseball games, and like our front yard, for a city house, we had this huge front yard. Our house was in the back, the back of the lot, and like everybody would play games in my front yard, and they'd tell me I couldn't play. I'm like, you're in my yard. They treated it like a park.
Dang.
So I was always getting in fights, and I was like the runt of the neighborhood. I was like the youngest kid, and I was always trying to hang out with my brother and his friends. So this guy kept seeing me getting in fights over pickup games of other sports, and he's like, you gotta wrestle. And he kept kind of bothering my parents about like letting me wrestle, and this was around like Stone Cold days. So I was like, yeah, like those golden years. I mean, I look at them as golden years of pro wrestling, like 90s, and I wanted to do it, and it was something totally different. They took me to a Chicago park, like one-off day of like wrestling introduction, and I just was so aggressive. All the kids were running away from me, and all the kids were in the class just running away from me the whole time. And he was like, "Yeah, you got to get this guy in a real team." So they like went back to my neighbor, and they're like, "Yeah, you could take him to your team." And he took me to like a lot of practices and tournaments from then till I was like maybe 11ish. And then this was the crazy part, was that he got arrested and deported, and he was in the Polish mob, and I didn't know that.
Oh,
none of us knew that. But
I thought he was going to be like some like Olympic wrestler or something. But okay, so he's in the Polish mob, gets deported. Was that like a big impact on you, or you kind of like just so wrapped up in middle school you were doing your own thing?
Yeah, it was hard on me. It was definitely hard on his son, and his son was like my brother. Yeah, it was hard because I had a lot of people impact my life in wrestling. So it wasn't the only person I leaned on. I leaned on all kinds of people, and I always looked at it as a disadvantage not being from a wrestling family. But now I look back at it, and it was a huge advantage, because I always loved wrestling. I was always chomping at the bit. I always wanted to be there. Like, I remember being on teams where I was the only kid who's like, who wanted to be there. Everybody else was like, my dad makes me wrestle. And I just never understood it. I always just loved wrestling. But yeah, so I had a lot of good people in my life, but yeah, none of it was family. It was all like guys like that guy. And, I think if he had opportunities that I had, he wouldn't be in that line of work. He came here as a teenager. He barely spoke the language. He's this big muscular wrestler dude. Yeah, of course he's just going to be the muscle for some bad guys, and he's got to make money. And so I actually went and saw him when I made my first world team. I went out to Poland. I hadn't seen him in years. And I went out and saw him and just thanked him for like everything he ever did for me, because I felt like I owed my life to this guy because he got me into wrestling.
Dang, and he's never been back to the States since then, huh?
No, he went to, yeah. And I almost like, I've talked about this openly a few times. I'm like, man, maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but I never like name his name or whatever. But like the people that, people know who I'm talking about, who are actually from the family or from the neighborhood. But yeah, it was crazy. And I just like telling the story because it's part of my story, and it is nuts, and it is wild that we had somebody in the Polish mob right next to us, and that was such a good guy to me. Like, and it just shows that like not everybody is all good and not everybody's all bad. And I don't look down on him for anything that he may or may not have done. To me, it was always just a great supportive guy who loves sports, and I think he would have loved the opportunities I got today. To be
what did
paid
he
to
say
wrestle.
when you got over there? Was he like, dude, I can't believe you're on the national team, or was he following you?
He was super proud, man. He was super proud to see me like got the USA singlet, and I made it, and he's crazy, and he's been following it, and it's nuts. And yeah, he was just super happy with me. I don't think he thought he would ever see me again, and he just can't believe like how far I've come. I don't think anybody believes it, because yeah, more about my story is that I was crazy ambitious and never really crazy successful. I think the best I did was I took like 4th at junior state as a kid, and I was going to figuring things out as I went. I was always doing off-season stuff, like always going to camps, always going to practices and tournaments, like anything I could find wrestling. A lot of the way I had a lot of people help me out financially because my parents couldn't pay for things. A lot of times it was just people, basically, giving me charitable donation just to like, yeah, you can come in our room, or yeah, I'll help you pay for the tournament, or like going door to door just to fundraise for tournaments and stuff. So, but yeah, and when I got to high school, I just wanted to be a state champ. Yeah, I just wanted to be a state champ so bad. And I was kind of one of those kids that came in every year and was like, I'm going to be a state champ. And I worked that hard. I like looking back and you know, it's not good to compare yourself to anybody, but I worked just as harder than anybody I knew, you know, on that level. And I just wasn't, I was good. I just wasn't like reaching those, like, you know, those higher levels, that one like step higher that everybody wants, you know, to be a state champ and more. I never was able to get there. I only qualified for state once. I didn't even make the varsity team as a freshman, which was like a huge shot. And then the next 3 years, I would go on to win, I think, like 110 matches or something in just 3 seasons. But I only qualified for state once. I still wanted to be a state champ. I still thought I could be a state champ, even though I was definitely not the favorite. And I went 0-2, and I was devastated. And I went into a big dark hole, and I almost didn't come out. And this is another reason why Rulon's one of my heroes. I gained about 60 pounds or more. You know, my my graduation picture they take at the starting of the year, and I had a shaved head, and I was 160 because I like wrestled Fargo 160 that summer. And then by the time I walked the stage, I think I was, you know, more than 60 pounds. I think I was like 245, and I had long hair. So it was like, you're like looking at the thing at graduation, you're like, who's that guy? Did he eat the other guy? Like, who is that?
So from state in February at Assembly Hall through May, you had gained 65 pounds?
No, like, so from state, I went 189, but I'm saying that we took our graduation pictures in the starting of the year. So not like state time, like we just came back after the summer, and I made 160 for Fargo my junior year. And so then I ended up going 189 that year. You know, football / wrestling, I kind of like bumped up, you know, football wanted me to get bigger, whatever. I bumped up to 189, which I still had a cut for. But the year before, I was wrestling 160 in high school, and I wrestled 160 at Fargo. And then by the time I walked the stage for graduation, you know, after not, you know, placing at state at 189, I was so depressed that like, I went from being a straight A student to like them almost kicking me out of the school a couple times in the last, you know, I was so depressed. And I told Steve I'd come to Elmhurst, but I really don't know where my head was at. At one point, I just dropped out of college. And at one point I was going to join the Army. And at one point I was like, just all kinds of crazy ideas. I was going to move out to Boise. But yeah, my dad was in Afghanistan at the time. And like a lot of my adolescent years, I didn't have like a father figure there just because my dad was always going on tours. And then soon my older brother, who he got into a lot of trouble, then he went in the Army, and then he was doing tours. So I was kind of on my own, and I was also helping raise my baby brother. He was 11 years younger than me. And so a lot of those like adolescent years, I look back and I didn't realize that a lot of it, I don't think was a work ethic thing or like wanting it or anything like that. I think that I was having a pretty hard time in life, and I didn't really realize that I didn't have much control over everything, you know, and maybe I didn't handle all those things in a healthy way. Instead, you know, I put a lot more pressure than needed on like winning and stuff like that. And anyways, I did not have the success I wanted. I was super depressed. I was like, probably 250 pounds. And my brother came home. He retired from the Army after a couple tours, and he was like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Sorry, I don't mean to swear, but okay. But I was sometimes not even going to school anymore, and I would just come home and like, I mean, the norm for me is I'm part of more than one wrestling club in the off season. You know, I'm going to like, I'm fluctuating wrestling practice. I'm like staggering them. Like I got like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I go to this club. Tuesday, Thursday, I go to this club. On, you know, Saturday, Sunday, I go to the tournaments or practice. And I was part of so many different wrestling rooms. You know, that was the norm for me. And, you know, he came home and I was just laying in bed all the time. You know, sometimes I wouldn't go to school, or sometimes I'd just like come home from school and I just go to sleep. And,
dude, you were hurting, huh?
Yeah. And, I had all this wrestling stuff all around my walls in my room my whole life. and I basically ripped everything down and destroyed all the trophies and all the pictures I had. And I think that was another big lesson of mine, is like I had so many idols in wrestling. I put too many people up on a pedestal, and like I kind of learned a lot of lessons from a dark place. And I kind of ripped everything off my wall and destroyed everything I have ever done, or anything I ever, idolizing past accomplishments or idolizing like other figures in wrestling. And, I threw it all in the middle of my room and destroyed it in like a crazy rage. But a lot of my biggest lessons were like from the darkest place ever. But my brother just got me back in the gym. He's like, all right, you don't got to wrestle anymore, but like, let's get you back in the weight room. Let's like get you working out, because you look unhealthy, and
so
think on my like,
before we go further, I just love to know, outside of not putting people on pedestals and putting too much pressure on yourself, what were some of those lessons that you gained from that place?
Yeah, to stop looking at rankings, to stop trying to control things that I can't control. Like that was the big one, and like I was talking about this a little bit. I talk about it a lot. Like I had a phenomena like happen to me at Fargo that the summer following, that like I now kind of understand a little bit, because I had a coach always talk to me about it when I was at Minnesota Storm. He was a world champ, Mike Houck, and he would always say the art of performance is training like it's the end of the world, like giving it everything you got, but then when you go to compete, just don't give a crap, and I think that a lot of us, we try and control every part of it. We try and give ourselves every advantage. We try and like plan everything out. And because I was such, I was so depressed, like to dangerous levels, like you got to worry about me levels. I didn't care about anything. Like it was the first time in my life where I gave up. And through giving up, I went to a tournament without caring much, without like, trying to control everything. And I went and won the damn thing. Like I won Fargo out of nowhere.
You won Fargo?
Yeah, I won Fargo that summer.
What
and
weight?
I wasn't training. 215.
Holy, was Medlin just going ballistic or what? Who's your coach?
Well, Medlin didn't pick me. I was such a like, dark horse that I was the last overall pick out of all the guys on Fargo. Like I go and coach Fargo, I go back, so I see how it works out. We have so many kids, we basically each coach like drafts, like each weight, they get their pick.
Oh,
I was
really?
the last overall pick. Yeah. And so like nobody wanted me. Not that Medlin didn't want me, but he just, nobody thought I was going to do well. All the coaches want to pick guys who they think are going to go deep into the tournament, or if they have a like personal relationship with the guy. So me and Medlin's relationship really grew after I won Fargo. Like I knew him and he helped me out, but like we really grew after I won Fargo. At the time, I just was like, who's this fat kid?
What about Mike Powell? Did you have a relationship with him at all at that time?
Yeah, Mike thought I died. Like he joked about it, but he was like, he's used to seeing me constantly in their wrestling. Like I went to St. Patrick High School, which is on Austin and Belmont, and we didn't do much off-season stuff. Like I was like the only guy that did off-season stuff. So I basically was an adopted Husky, as Mike would say. I was always in Oak Park room, always wrestling Greco and freestyle with them. And that summer, they didn't see me like at the season, and they were just like, I remember showing up like the week of Freestyle State, like literally the first time I'm on the mat since February. I just like, I'm looking at forums about who may be at Freestyle State. And it's funny because one of the things that was going on was that 215 was a weaker weight class, and 189 was a weight class I was in. And then like halfway through the year, a lot of the 189s like bumped up to 215 and had a lot of success. And I stayed put at 189 because I didn't want to feel like I was running from anything. And I didn't want to water down like all state medal. I wanted like tough bracket. I wanted to like do something big, whatever. But I was kind of salty about it. So I saw some of those guys were going to be at Freestyle State. So I was like, I got to make 215. And I went to Freestyle State and I won it for the first time, just not working out. But Mike saw me that week and he was like, I thought you died, but yeah, Mike Powell taught me Greco. Mike Powell, he's one of those people in my life that just came up so big for me, and in ways that he would do for anybody. But to me, it was like it was game changing. But that's just the kind of person he is. He does this kind of stuff for a lot of people.
Yeah.
He's just one of those people that I don't know, there's something special about him to where he can help such a wide range of people and not even know who he's really helping. You know, I was kind of just a guy that was always showing up on his own in the practice room, and I was eating up everything he was saying from the first time I met him, you know, and he helped me out so much. And then when he found out I was for real, he helped me more and more, you know, and then that relationship never ended. You know, when I was at Elmhurst College, I would still come to, you know, help out at Oak Park and help out with Team Illinois. And he was always helping me, mentoring me, and he still does.
He's incredible, especially if you're one of those kids like you where you don't have a strong father figure. You go to a practice at Oak Park and hear Mike Powell yelling at people, you're like, oh, I got to get my act together. Like, this guy's for real.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, yeah, my dad was a man. He wasn't there a lot.
Yeah.
when in those years, and those are hard years to not have anybody there.
Yeah.
And that's really, yeah, in a weird way, that's really, I guess, through the sport of wrestling, I found people to be that guy for me. And even if they didn't know they were, you know, like, I don't think Mike Powell knew the impact he had on me until later on in life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was eating up every word he was saying. And I was, you know, especially in the starting, I was an outsider. So it was just like, keep my mouth shut and ears open and listen to everything this guy has to say. And I mean, he introduced me to positivity. How ridiculous is that? Like, I never even thought about being positive until I met Mike Powell. Like, everything was negative for me. It was all just suffer and old world wrestling thoughts, like suffer through the pain and never tell yourself you're good. It's like punishment. Like, he introduced me to the concept of positivity, which is ridiculous. But yeah, I didn't really have it was always negative reinforcement. If you did well, you should have done better, kind of thing. And I think that's really bad for my personality type, you know?
That is an old way to think about it, though. And you look at guys now, it just seems like a refreshing take on competing and having fun out there. And that's a super broad generalization, but yeah, man, back in those days, it was the dungeon mentality, right?
Yeah.
So after you win Fargo, and this is a facetious question, but you win Fargo, then you go on this, then you never have a downturn again. But obviously that's not the case because you thought about leaving Elmhurst. So what happened after you won Fargo to like your college career? Why did you maybe quit college or after having such a high like that of winning Fargo?
Yeah, it was just crazy. And I just chalk it up to being a dumb 18-year-old. But I didn't get recruited by anybody, man. Like, literally, I got a letter sent to my high school, like not even to my house, by Elmhurst College. And it wasn't even like special to me. It was just to every senior on my high school team. That was my recruiting experience. I got a letter from Elmhurst College, and so did every other senior on my high school team.
Mm-hmm.
And I just went. I met Steve. You know, I've met him a couple times. Met Steve. Like, we ate a sandwich. We walked across campus in a couple minutes, and I shook his hand. I was like, all right, I'll come here. That was my recruiting process. And, you know, I had dreams my whole life of wrestling D1, of being a D1 NCAA champ and all this stuff like that. And like I said, I've always been working on that level, you know, like all of my friends, they were going on to D1 schools, like all the people I surrounded myself with, and they were going to be All-Americans or NCAA champs. And it was just like, damn, you know, so and a lot of this was learning, you know, how rich a D3 wrestling experience could be. I just had no idea. I was just a punk 18-year-old, like any other 18-year-old. It's all like D1 or bust, you know, it's all kids think. And that's all I thought. But, you know, after winning Fargo, I like All-American and freestyle too. So all of a sudden I have some like last second opportunities to go to other places. And one of them was Ivan Ivanov moved out to Idaho, and they were starting a thing out there. So I actually dropped out of college during orientation. we were like a day or two into orientation. I just withdraw from the college, and I pawn everything I own, and I'm just gonna move to Boise and wrestle Greco. And because I was actively trying to go to Northern Michigan and all these other places, just nobody wanted me. and and yeah.
So what happened when you got out there?
I never got out there.
Oh shit.
I'm talking Justin Reese, and I'm getting everything set up, and I'm super pumped. But like the thing is, college wasn't a given if I went out there. It was kind of like, yeah, you come out here, you work in a year, you'll be able to get in-state tuition at Boise State, and it'll be really cheap. But we don't have like any kind of school like affiliation to our program. We're just out here wrestling Greco. But it was studs out there, it was like Jake Kirby and Cheney Haight and Jordan Holm and Justin Reese, and like it would have been really good for me, but all those guys already had a degree and I was just an 18-year-old pudgy kid. And I'm sure it would have been amazing, but I wouldn't have gotten a degree. And I'm the only one in my immediate family still that has a degree. Like none of my siblings or parents have a degree. So, and I was actually a good student. And so it wasn't going to be like crazy for me personally to get a degree, but like, I just wanted to wrestle, so I tried, yeah. And at some points I almost joined the military, but like, yeah, I drop out of school and I get like a call from my dad through a satellite phone because he's in Afghanistan, and he finds out about it somehow. I don't know, like got my grandpa, my dad, and everybody calling me like somebody's got to talk this kid into going back to college, and basically called me and was like, listen, idiot, like get your degree, and so I listened. Actually, this is one of the times I listened to somebody. but
so did you go back that semester or take one off and then go?
No, I went right back. And Steve was pissed off about it, and talk about rocky start. Steve's excited about me. He recruits me, he gets me. He's like, all right, state qualifier. And then the high of like, whoa, this guy won nationals. He just, All-American freestyle. This kid's way better than we thought. And then I just withdraw from the college. So from Steve's standpoint, it was like I betrayed him. But, like, I don't think he knew how like bad I was doing. And then I just won. And then I just hit like the highest high after the lowest low. And I was 18 and stupid. So, but I stayed, and it was amazing when I got. How
good did it feel to win Fargo that year after all that shit you had gone through?
Man, it was crazy. Like it seriously felt like there was some kind of intervention. It was kind of like God was grabbing me and telling me like, hey, this wasn't all for nothing. Like all that hard work you put in, like let's get back to it. Like you can be successful. You can be the wrestler you dreamed about being. Because to be honest, like I didn't have a lot of people telling me I could. And like the worst person was, myself, like, and that was just a moment where I let go of the steering wheel and I won. And I won like a really big tournament. And that's crazy because it's like, hey, maybe there's something to letting go of the steering wheel. Maybe there is something to being positive and believing in myself. And I wouldn't even say I believed in myself at that tournament. I just had no cares, and so then the belief in myself started to come, and that I could be a good wrestler. And it was an amazing feeling. Like, yeah, it's always going to be probably the best moment of my wrestling life. And it doesn't matter, even if I was to win an Olympic gold medal, I don't think anything could really top that,
It's like if someone would have told you like that Saturday night or whatever day at high school state, so let's say it's Friday night at Illinois State Tournament, you're 0-2, you're absolute rock bottom, sobbing. And if someone would have said, hey, dude, 5 months from now, you're going to be the Fargo champ, what would you have said?
Yeah, I wouldn't have believed him at all, man.
That's just crazy. It's awesome how it works out like that, though. I mean, you had to go through that to get to that high place. So how did you do in college after that first semester? Did you lock in after that?
Yeah, I locked in. I immediately was this loudmouth freshman that was like not going to take crap from any of the seniors. And for the first half of the year, everybody hated me. and then they found out that I was for real. And I think halfway point through the season, I think I'm like 500 or something. And then I just kind of take off, and so like even what was really good about D3 wrestling is there are no red shirts. And if you're good enough, you start right away. So I started right away. I figured a lot out. And yeah, right away, you know, like halfway through the season, I kind of saw that, hey, I could be successful. I kind of had to take a couple licks to be like, hey, this is D3, but if you don't try your hardest, you're going to be nobody on this level. Like I wanted to be somebody on the D1 level, and you come in with this chip on your shoulder or whatever, and you think you're better than D3, and then you wrestle D3, and you see it with a lot of guys who come down from D1. You know, they think they're too good for this level, and then they lose to some people. But like, yeah, I took a lot of licks, and then I was like, hey, this is, you know, I got to work my butt off, and I could be successful at this level and at any level. And that's kind of what Steve told me. You know, he's like, when you're moving your hands and your feet, you can beat anybody, you know, any level. And I started to believe that, and I started to work tremendously hard. Steve is kind of like a Yoda. He's a little guru, and his personality works perfectly for my personality, because he's kind of like, he's gonna show you how to do it, but you got to do it. You know, he's not gonna like make you do anything. If you want to be like a chump, I mean, Steve will get out of your way. But if you want to be a champion, he's gonna help push you. You know, and it's just his personality, and it's perfect for me because I'm kind of like a cat. Sometimes when you tell me what to do too many times, I'm gonna be like, you know what? I don't want to do that, even though I know what it's like the right thing to do. You know, like, so he kind of was. He gave me room to really be myself, and yeah, I went and found people that could beat me up, and I beat up a lot of the guys in my room, and then I was just actively going out, and just like high school, I was knocking on every door, and I was in all these high school rooms, wrestling Greco and coaching Greco. And then I kept knocking on the door of the Olympic Training Center, and they wouldn't let me in for a while. And then they finally let me in, and I like completely fund the whole thing. And I fund my way out to a bunch of different Greco freestyle wrestling tournaments in the off season, you know, and just working jobs and raising my own money for it. And slowly, I just get better on the D3 level. You know, my freshman year, I took third at the regional, which is good enough to qualify for nationals now. After the year after, it was good enough to qualify for nationals. But back then, only top two went. And our regional that year had like the most All-Americans. So then they started giving us a lot more bids. And then it kind of came to like top three. We went away from the bid system in D3. So I took third. I pulled off some really big wins at the end there. Big duels, and even at the regional, but it wasn't good enough to get the bid to go to nationals. So then, yeah, that summer and the summers to follow that, I put in so much freaking work. And it's kind of like, I found out a lot at Fargo, and from those dark times, I kind of found out a lot about how I needed to frame my mind in competition. And I just brought back the work ethic that I've been kind of used to my whole life. And so with those two parts working together, actually believing myself, actually just focusing on what I can control, and then the crazy work ethic, I just started to take off. And, you know, I set the goal of being an All-American the next year, but because Steve told me to make realistic goals, but secretly, my goal was to be a national champ and even more, you know. But I've always had to try and set a goal like higher than the goal. Like if I want to be an All-American, I need to set the goal of being the best D3 wrestler in the whole country, you know, or like if I want to be the NCAA champ, I need to say like, hey, I want to be an Olympic champ. Like I always need to. It's really true for my story and for me that, like, you know, shoot for the moon, land among stars kind of thing, and to genuinely like set that goal. Like as a D3 guy wanting to be an Olympian, I think a lot of people just kind of thought I was like full of it, or that I was just crazy, but I meant it. And that was the only reason why I even could be an NCAA champ at that level. Because if my goal was to be an NCAA champ, I never would have made it. But yeah, so that I put in like crazy amount of work, you know, summers of just working, wrestling as soon as I get off work, lifting after I wrestle, you know, getting a couple hours of sleep, waking up, doing a morning run, and then doing it all over again. And then going to any tournament I could find, any training camp I could find, and doing that all summer. And just finding all these wrestlers around the area and building a little kind of a little wrestling paradise at Elmhurst College, and, you know, having a lot of freedom and having a lot of different places where I had mat space where every single day. There were some days where I would bring in just like 50 guys from places that weren't even from my college, to some random wrestling mat. And I would just use Facebook and stuff like that. And I would just have
What?
all these different guys from around the area,
You were
guys
possessed, dude.
yeah. There was practices where I'm just like, hey, I got this world silver medalist in town. And anybody that wants to come from around the area, come see. And then we just got this guy named Georgi Kalchev just showing us technique. And it's like, who's in the room? It's not even Elmhurst guys. It's like I'm in a room with mats with just 50 wrestlers from around the area. Like I just was networking and just bringing everybody together. And like, there's this crazy Russian guy who's like a trucker, and whenever he's in town, I'm like, hey, come pummel with me. Like they're just like all these people. And a lot of it was like Moneyball. A lot of it was like guys who, for whatever reason, people didn't want in the wrestling room because they were different, or they were, whatever. And I always had the mentality that like, I want to wrestle as many different styles and people as I can possibly. Like ideally, I want to go with someone different every day of practice. It's someone completely different, because that's how tournaments are. I never understood like wrestling the same guy every day. Like,
dude, didn't you do that same thing during when COVID hit? Didn't you go over to Europe and just do the kind of that same approach?
Yeah, same approach with a little bit more funding behind me, but like I've always just kind of worked with whatever I had. And I've always kind of just like when coaches let me take control, I get so much out of myself. When or let me at least like build this crazy, beautiful wrestling world that I have in my mind. And when it all comes together, it's crazy. And I feel like when I have people tell me like, yeah, no, you just stick to our plan, that, sometimes it's not as good as what I feel like I can get accomplished if like we are more open to a bunch of different people. And that is the one thing that's been harder for me in D1 wrestling rooms in my senior level like career, is that like there's a lot more of an elitist approach. If someone's not good enough, they don't deserve to be in our room. And that's not like always the case. Sometimes it's just a liability thing. We can't have some random guy in a room. But my dream one day would be have enough money to build something like what Mike Powell is doing right now. I always dreamed of just building a huge state-of-the-art wrestling facility that anybody can come to, like anybody, and everybody's welcome. And I feel like it should be more of a workshop. It should be more of a group think. We should be, whether a wrestler is, 6 years old and starting out, or he's 40, like, I feel like everybody can teach you something, just like the Dan Gable quote. And yep. I think that practices should be more open, and that people should be able to share more of what they're doing, what they're feeling, what they're seeing. And it's not always what we get in the traditional American wrestling practice. But anyways, I'm going off the rails.
That's
here.
Okay. Tell us about the national title at Elmhurst. I got to know about that.
Yeah. So that was really fought for hard, like you see what I've done since, and, and you would think that it'd be easy for me to win a D3 title, but it was extremely hard for me to accomplish that, and I was an All-American the next year, my sophomore year. It's my first time going to nationals. And another thing is, throughout my whole career, I went and was a spectator or a training partner at the tournament. And then, the year that I didn't make it, like at state nationals, I was a training partner in my freshman year at nationals. And then the next year, I saw the tournament. I saw what it's like. I saw what the winners are doing. I saw how the winners are wrestling. So then the next year, I had a really good tournament, and I ended up taking 7th. So I was an All-American. And then the next year, I'm doing so well that everybody thinks I'm going to win it, but I take 3rd. I get upset in the quarters. It's devastating. I take 3rd. And then my senior year, I'm known, as one of the best wrestlers in D3, like college, amongst the D3 division, but I still don't have a title behind my name. So I almost felt like a fraud. But, I'm going and I'm placing at Midlands, and I'm doing well in international tournaments. So I feel like I did earn that, but I didn't have the national title. So it just like felt kind of like a fraud. So I had a lot of pressure on that, but it was just an amazing run that year. I didn't lose a single match on the D3 level. We had some crazy situation at a tournament where they didn't let me wrestle the second day because they said we were a minute late to weigh-ins, but it was BS. So I took like technically two L's on the D3 level, but nobody beat me on the D3 level that year. And it was dominant, mostly techs and pins. And I finally had a team behind me. Like the whole time I loved my team there, but I finally had a team where we as a group believed that we could do something great. And us as a team, we took second in the country. It's our first trophy and it's our only trophy as a team. And, before Steve, the program was going to be cut. And then I had this crazy vision that we could be national champs one day. And I don't think everybody realized that we could have been, until we went and took second. It was like, hey guys, we could have won it, but it was just one thing that I noticed compared to all the other top teams was that we had a lot more fun than anybody else. And we were in the finals of like the national duels, and we're wrestling Wartburg, and they look like a military, and we're all like singing songs and goofing around and like chasing each other and messing around. And I wouldn't trade that. I wouldn't trade a national title, for all the fun I had with those guys, and we really were like I guess what we call a bad news bears kind of team, in all the greatest ways. And the addition of like Mikey Benefiel and these other guys too helped me tremendously. And a lot of it was getting smarter, getting more efficient that senior year. And I think I did less work and got better results. And that was just me trying to be smarter. I think I worked too hard. Every year before that, I was working too hard. So that senior year was kind of like learning how to be poised. Like Steve is really good at that. And Steve really works on me with sports psych. But I went out and I had a weird match in the finals. I almost lost the thing for myself, but I went out and I won it. And it was an amazing moment. The whole Elmhurst College story had a lot of ups and downs. I had a lot of crazy things happen. I almost left Elmhurst halfway through again.
What happened that time?
I was going to try and wrestle for Northwestern, and I had dreams of being a D1 wrestler, but I just didn't have the opportunity. So I placed at Midlands a couple times, and I was gonna try and go wrestle on a D1 level, but I didn't. And but I tried at one point. I tried to leave again, and I feel bad about it. But I want to be a D1 champ. I want to be a D1 All-American, and I felt like I was good enough to be. Like when I wrestle these guys in the room, when I wrestle them in tournaments, it's like I can wrestle on this level, And so yeah, I hate to admit it, but there was a lot of ups and downs. And what prompted that a lot too was I was going through a lot of death in my like local community. I was having a lot of friends either overdose on heroin or I had a couple friends kill themselves. I remember having that opportunity with Northwestern and saying no the first time, no to myself and everything. And then when, and this is very immature, but Mikey Benefiel came to my team, and it wasn't Mikey. I love Mikey, but like somebody in Mikey's like group, reached out to me and was like, yeah, you better go up or down because Mikey's coming and he's going to be at 184. And like, I felt like everybody was just telling me like, I better get out of Mikey's way. And that's not who Mikey is at all. Mikey's like the most chill dude. He doesn't care. He doesn't really have much of an ego, but like his people did at first. So I was like, screw that. Cause the whole summer I was asking Steve, like, do you want me at 197 or 184? 197 or 184? And I felt like he was just waiting to see if Mikey was going to get into our school. And then Mikey did. And he's like, we want you at 197 now. And then I had some of his people telling me like, yeah, I better get out of the way of Mikey at 184. So then I was like, nuh-uh. Like at first my reaction was like, so with that interaction, and then with like, I had my friend Steve kill himself around the same time, and thinking about life and thinking about like, hey, we only got one go at this. Like you always want to be a D1 wrestler. And then having Mikey come and it was the wrong and immature like way to look at it. But I felt like, yeah, everybody was basically like, Mikey's so good, you better get out of his way. And I felt like I worked my whole, like, I worked my butt off at the D3 level to get to the NCAA champ point.
Mm-hmm.
And then this guy kind of just came in and like they expected me to get out of the way. And so did Steve. But really, Steve was just trying to put the best lineup he could have. You know,
Right.
If he could have a national champ at 97 and one at 84, then why wouldn't he want that? And I cut a ton of weight, but I was immature about it. And
so what happened? So you're like,
so,
that's it, I'm out of here, essentially?
Yeah, I'm out of here. I'm going to go to Northwestern. and it didn't work out that way. I did take the first couple of duels off my senior year, and while I like decided what I really wanted to do. Steve was like, all right, well, you can't come to practice then. And that was kind of like,
So had to be tense times, dude.
Yeah, it was. And so I was sitting in it, and yeah, and it was hard because a lot of it was immaturity, and a lot of it is like, I look like a lot of my decisions are misunderstood, but I've always taken the lens of like, hey, we're all going to die. We all have limited time. We're like, and not everybody's going to understand why I'm doing this, but maybe that's morbid, but I keep that in the back of my mind with everything I do. Like, hey, am I scared? May I lose? Or what, could this go terribly wrong? It's like, yeah, but I'm going to die. I got one life, and that really hit me hard around then because my friend Steve killed himself. And then the whole Mikey Benefield thing was happening. And so that was like, I'm going to Northwestern. I always want to wrestle D1. I'm going to go wrestle D1. And I had the interesting thing was I would have had to finish Elmhurst College. So I would have had to graduate and then transfer over to Northwestern, so then I would have sat out the year. It would have been basically like a redshirt year. But I was sitting there, not at practice, and I felt like I was letting the whole team down because I was the captain. I was like the captain since day one, like vocally. And they told me that, like when I was a freshman, we had a bunch of like stud seniors when I was a freshman at Elmhurst, but they all were kind of lead by example guys. And I'm like a loudmouth, but I also back it up, So they, some of the assistant coaches told me right away, like, we need you to be like the vocal leader, like as a freshman. So it's like, fine. And like I said, everybody hated me until halfway through the year, but then they found out I was for real. But I was a captain, and I would say I was even more than a captain. I was given so much like, control and technically, D3 coaches aren't allowed to coach anybody in the summer. That's the NCAA rule. So I basically was like coaching everybody all summer long, like anybody from Elmhurst who wanted to work out in the off season. I was running practices and I was doing all this stuff. Like I said, I was bringing people together from all over the area and traveling to people. I was driving all over the place, and
so what, you were sitting in like your dorm or something, you realized I can't leave these guys, or how what was like the turning point?
Yeah, I just felt like our team, we finally have a run to get a trophy, and I'm the captain, but I'm sitting here and I'm leaving all my guys like in the dust, like I'm not only letting Steve down, I'm letting, and there was weirdness on the team at that point. And Mikey came and he's like, man, like there was some animosity between me and him because of everything that happened in the starting, which like completely went away right away. But like, it felt like there was a civil war on the team, and that like, and everybody was just like, looked at me all the time for like the answers. And then I'd turn around and I'm like, hey, I'm leaving, guys. And a lot of guys on the team, I think it wasn't fair to them. And so I just decided to come back. And then the first tournament I come back for, we both wrestle awesome. And it's me and Mikey Benefield in the finals. and like I said, the team's in like a civil war. At this point, I haven't even like, nothing's been really said between me and Mikey. He's never done anything wrong to me. He's never been anything but a good guy to me. But it was my team, and I basically was told to get out of my own spot to make way for Mikey Benefield. So like I said, I was immature about it. Mikey was just a good dude the whole time, but there's a little civil war going. And Mikey was this, he was the best wrestler in the country as a high schooler.
Yeah, people got to realize, for Illinoisans, Mike Benefield, Superman, was larger than life, dude. He won like, I remember when he lost to IKWF State in 7th grade, but other than that, he didn't lose from like 4th grade. You know, he won 4 state titles. He beat Albert White for 3rd and 4th at the Dvorak that year. I think he did.
Beat Jordan Blanton in one of those finals.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, he won
and
Fargo.
beat him bad.
You know, went to Northwestern, went to Oklahoma State, was a round of 12 guy, and then you just didn't find his way but until coming to Elmhurst. So did you guys both win it that year?
Yeah. But that's
Wow.
what's crazy is that we get into the finals of the first tournament I come back, and Steve comes up to me. He's like, you know, you guys are from the same team. Do you want to wrestle? And I was like, hell yeah. But like, I still was angry. I was like, I want to wrestle. Because like, I felt like I was coming into college here. Mikey was coming in, you know, like off the camera. And I worked my butt off to like get even close to him. And he just comes to our school. And I felt kind of betrayed a little bit, like immaturely. I felt betrayed by Steve because like, I've been your guy since day one. I am a D3 guy.
And you were taking it personal, and he was just trying to make a better team.
I was making it personal. Steve was just trying to make a better team. Mikey was just like, hey man, I'm just trying to wrestle, man. And you know, like it wasn't fair to anybody. You know, it definitely wasn't fair to Mikey, but I took it personal, you know, and how could I not, you know, like yeah. I put my soul into this team, but
so what happened?
But yeah, Mikey and coach decided that it would be bad if we wrestled. But I was like, no, I want to wrestle him. Like, let's go. And then from that point on, Mikey decided he was going to go 174. So I was going to go 184. He was going to go 174, which again is not fair to Mikey. But you know, whatever. I'm the 184. You know, yeah. And I worked my butt off, and I was one of the best D3 wrestlers. And so he goes 174, and he misses weight at Midlands. And then at that point, he just decides, I'm just jumping all the way up to 97. And and there was a couple losses in there for him, and he's finding his way. But by the time we got to nationals, he pinned everybody. He got the trophy for like the most pins in the fastest amount of time at nationals. So we both win nationals. We both have the same result, but we came from totally different places, right? Like I don't know, you don't want to put it in a you know, a D3 title. It's not as easy to say D3, D2, D1, you know, because I've beaten D2 champs and you know, I've beaten D1 All-Americans, but like, let's say the D3 title's here. I'm starting down here. Mikey's starting way up here, but we find ourselves at the same point, and we both win a national title in very dominant fashion. Like, I think if Mikey wouldn't have been there, I would have won the most pins in the shortest amount of times. Like, we both dominate. And like, once we get past all that stuff in the starting, me and Mikey become good friends, and we both just have a lot of fun, you know, training together. And we had a lot of fun winning a national title together. And I think it was Mikey's like first time in a long time having fun in the sport, which is really cool to see.
Yeah.
And because I think he's been treated like a prized racehorse for so long. He's been so freaking good, and everyone around him just wants to help them win. And it's so serious all the time. And Mikey's not a very serious, like, he's a champion, but you know, in his everyday life, he's just a goofy guy. Like, he's just a light-hearted guy. He just wants to like have fun, I feel like, you know. And so, you know, we had the same result, and we had a lot of fun, and we took second as a team, even though we only brought 5 guys to nationals. We had all 5 guys All-American, and yeah, it was a hell of a run.
Dude, that's crazy. And then you had, so we can't even get to it today, unfortunately, but
sorry. Yeah.
No, this is awesome, dude. I didn't know a lot about the stuff with Benefiel and with your family situation. But so that same year, 2014, you win D3s, then you go and make your first world team. Is that right?
Yeah. So I win D3s in 2013, and then I make my world team. I make my world team, and guess where it's at? It's in Fargo. I make a world team in 14. So like, when I leave Elmhurst College, everybody that cares about me is trying to talk me out of a senior level wrestling career, because I feel like they just cared about me and they're trying to protect me. But yeah, and you know, there was a couple points where I almost turned back and went to Chicago because I was training on Minnesota. But
wait, so how does that work? You're done with college, like you're like, I want to be a senior level wrestler. Where did you go? Like, what was your first RTC?
Well, it was Minnesota Storm, but it never would have happened if like every summer in between, I wasn't like knocking on every door and showing up to Greco tournaments and freestyle tournaments. And I think even D1 guys, but definitely D3 guys, they're like, why would I go to like the Sunkist, or why would I go to NYC, or why would I go to the US Open? Like, I'm just going to get my butt kicked. And that's exactly why I'm going. And this is what I want to do. So it was like 4 years of college and me just paying for my way out to these camps and these tournaments on the senior level, and nobody really, not really getting anywhere, but seeing how it works. And then as soon as I was done with Elmhurst, that's kind of why there was like a lot of underneath the iceberg going on there. While I was at Elmhurst, I was actively pursuing Greco, and nobody really was helping me out. There weren't like too many breakthroughs, but there was a lot of small moral victories and some huge lessons. So, you know, I'm actively working for it, but I'm calling the Olympic Training Center and all these people, and they're all like, they don't even know who I am, even though I've been there multiple times, you know, and they don't even know who they're talking to, because they're like, oh, and I was talking to national team coaches, you know, because I'm trying to go out to Olympic Training Center. And I'm like, I pay for my way to go out to camp like at least once a year, if not a couple times. But, you know, I'm just some kid, you know, they don't remember me. And I'm actively emailing and calling people. Nobody's interested in me. And I go out through Augsburg College. They plugged me in with Minnesota Storm. And you know, they talk to me. I win my national title. I'm doing like celebratory sprints because I was a little bit crazier back then. And you know, the coach from Augsburg College, he reached out to me and he's like, hey, I know you want to wrestle Greco. Like, we're starting something big here, you know, because there always was Minnesota Storm, but this is going to be like a way bigger thing where we're paying athletes to be in Minnesota and train in Minnesota. And I was like, perfect. Hell yeah, man. Sign me up. So I go back to Elmhurst, you know, we celebrate my birthday and the national title. And I get a phone call from Jordan Holm, and it's like, I don't know, 8 p.m. at night, and I'm in Elmhurst, Illinois. And he's just like, he gives me all the information on Minnesota Storm, and I'm freaking pumped. And he's like, yeah, you know, if you want to try out, we have practice tomorrow at 6 a.m. And I'm just like, all right, I'll be there. So I hop in my like little Volkswagen Golf, and I just gun it to Minnesota in the middle of the night. And there's a blizzard. It's like this time of year, but there's like one of these blizzards, you know, all through Wisconsin. And like, I'm in a Volkswagen Golf, so I'm driving like 40 miles per hour, and there's little cars going off the side of the road. Like, there's cars in ditches, and I'm just like trying not to spin out in my Golf. I get there at 6 a.m. and the workout is a basketball game. And I was like so pissed because I didn't sleep. But I really think it was like, let's see if this kid like means what he says. Let's see his level of dedication here. And I think Jordan's a madman, but he helped me out so much. But yeah, I show up, I get there at 6 a.m. on no sleep, and we play basketball, and I meet the guys. And then the real tryout is at 3 p.m. That's when the coach is going to be there. That's when we're going to wrestle. So I'm sleeping on a college guy's recliner in his dorm room from like 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. And they're all calling me because I'm so tired that like I almost missed practice. So like Tommy Boy it, like I like chug an energy drink, and I'm running across campus, and I bust into the room, and Coach Chandler's there from Minnesota Storm, and I have like the practice of my life. And I think it's because, again, I was so tired and so unprepared that that I couldn't think much. I couldn't try and control the situation because, you know, I was running on fumes. At that point. Yeah, and I go out there and I have a hell of a practice, and they're Chandler's like waiting at the end of practice with like a Minnesota Storm sweater, and he's like, "Do you want to wrestle for Minnesota Storm?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah!" You know, and like I'm actively trying to find a team, and they let me come. And that didn't mean that they were going to start paying me or anything. That just meant that now I have a coach, now I have some teammates, and but I still got to finish college. So at that point, go back to Elmhurst. I'm finishing out college, and I'm actively still going to wrestling camps like Olympic Training Center and all this stuff like that. Elmhurst, another like huge advantage of being at a D3 school, the whole school like rallied behind me and supported me. I felt like I heard other athletes like that their teachers hated them because they're an athlete and special treatment, stuff like that. Like most of my professors were at my dual meet. And then when I said like, hey, I got to leave for 3 weeks to go to Olympic Training Center, they were just like, go, man. Like, I think it was just people learned that like I was doing something different, like in the starting of my time at Elmhurst, I was having security guards kick me out when I was working out way too late. Cause sometimes I work out in the middle of the night, like it's like 11 PM or 1 AM or like they'd kick me out of the facility. And then it turned into, before I left, like the security guards were talking to me, and they would talk to me every night, and they're just shooting the shit with me, and they love me. You know what I mean? So like everybody around me was supporting me. So I'm finishing college and I'm writing papers from afar and doing everything I need to do while I'm at the Olympic Training Center and stuff like that. And I show up to the US Open in April, and I have a hell of a tournament, and I took fourth. Didn't win it, but I took fourth, and I beat some big names. And all of a sudden I'm like the hot girl in school. Now all of a sudden everybody wants me, but I had to stay loyal to Minnesota Storm because they're the ones that actually wanted to give me a chance before they saw like, me take fourth at the Open. So yeah, at that point there was some temptation to go to Olympic Training Center and some other places after that. Because people saw that performance, but Minnesota saw something in me before that. So
you learned your lesson this time.
Yeah. Right. As soon as I graduated, exactly. And that's a big thing, is learning lessons from your past mistakes. But as soon as I graduated, I was like, I'm going to Minnesota, guys.
You just moved into a little apartment up there? Or?
Yeah. I first moved in with the pastor. I was living in like the upstairs of a pastor's duplex for 3 months. And then I moved on to my buddy's couch. So when I made the world team, I was living on a couch.
Wow. So you represent Team USA the following year in that's your living situation. Pretty crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have 10 minutes left until I have to go, and I should have booked way more time for this because we could talk all day. From 2014, no, dude, don't apologize. This is awesome. From 2014 through now, you've been a staple on the world, on the national team. You made the world team a couple times since then. This April, the Olympic trials, an atrocity happened. We don't have to go into what happened, but you were involved in an atrocity, in my opinion. What is happening next? Is there any hope for any type of re-wrestle, rematch type of a situation? And what happened in your eyes, I guess?
Yeah. Appreciate you saying that. And I wish we didn't have to do this, but a lot of great things have happened, and there's a huge chance. I think we're going to get that chance. And
yeah, let's go.
I'm excited, man. I'm excited. I think we're going to get that chance. I think we got a great case. We raised the money. The wheels are in motion. Basically, we go to the USOPC. We tell them like, hey, we need action on this. Like formally, we need action on this. And normally what's going to happen is they're going to say like, no. And then we have to say, we demand arbitration.
Yep.
And then at that point, we should win arbitration. And
so have you done that yet or not yet?
Yeah, that's all happening right now as we speak, basically. So we will probably go into arbitration really soon, and we should get matches really soon. And if for whatever reason it doesn't work, like, man, like I gotta love the wrestling community around me for trying, for helping, because I didn't know how I was gonna go on, like especially everything I've been through. Like I didn't know how I was gonna go on as a coach, even with this like being the end of my story. And that's like I think something that why Coach Powell and Coach Medlin are pushing me to fight this, and a bunch of other people that care about me and people in the wrestling community, because they're like, this can't be the end to your story, man. So
had you beaten that guy before who you wrestled?
I've never wrestled him before, but I never had problems with him in practice.
Yeah.
But he was at the weight lower than me.
And he moved up for the Olympic year type of deal. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I think we got a really good chance. And I think if I get that chance, I think I'm going to win. And I'm confident. And, no matter what happens, I'm going to feel a lot better that we left no stone unturned, because it wasn't fair to any of us that this happened. I wish that I didn't have to be doing this right now. I don't like pleading my case. I don't like having a fundraise. I don't like it. It's great that everybody is supporting me. It's amazing. It's overwhelming. It humbles me, but like, I wish that we would have just had a level playing field when we were at trials, because it's not fair to John. It's not fair to me. It's not fair to anybody who's trying to have the team set and get ready for Tokyo. It's not fair to anybody, but that's why somebody should have stepped up, because Coach Medlin did try and get the ref changed,
right?
And they wouldn't step up. They wouldn't do that. And
I'll say it because I don't know if you can. What happened was there was a wrestler from the Marines, the officials from the Marines. You can guess the rest of what happened there. And they had requested to change the ref. They denied the request, which to me doesn't make any sense. Why would you deny that? And so, I posted a ton about it. Medlin posted.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Oh, dude, it's infuriating because wrestling is a filthy, filthy sport, especially on the international level. But it sometimes it trickles into the United States, and it just pains me to know that our favorite sport is ripe with corruption. It's ripe with bribing people, like Yoel Romero taking second like 7 times. Like, how does that happen? I mean, it's like the amount of it is a huge bummer when you finally find out that wrestling, at least on the international level, is ripe with corruption. And I don't know if this was like a planned situation where there's money involved, but this is just someone's personal bias and absolutely ridiculous. The tech fall was in hand, and then he stops the move. I can't even believe what we were watching. So I do think I've had Adam Terapelli on the show after that, and we kind of broke down all the matches, but we got to yours because he's an Illinois guy, and University of Illinois. But he was saying that he thinks athletes pretty much always win an arbitration. So you got to, for what it's worth, he thinks he got a good shot. I know that Mike's been helping you, and hopefully we get some of these big time firms in Chicago, like the Sidley Austins of the world, on the case and helping you out, man, because we want to see you out there. But even if you don't win this thing, bro, your story, you have the ability to impact so many kids' lives who aren't from those families where they have wrestling parents, or they're not from the families where they could afford to go to overtime. Like, you have a real purpose in life and a real mission ahead of you, irrespective of what happens here. And I don't know why you're not the Greco coach at the Beat the Streets facility, because that's your mission, brother. So, I mean, you are just beginning your journey, in my opinion, the amount of impact you're going to have. So I appreciate you coming on here, sharing the story, and we're going to follow this closely. And you got the whole Illini, the whole Wrestling Changed My Life nation behind you, dude.
Thanks so much, man.
Dude,
I appreciate it.
I can't tell you how many times someone's been like, bro, you got to get Joe Rao on the show. And a shout out to my man, Dominic Angelo, who's that coach at St. Pat's, who's one of my good friends. We hang out all the time.
I didn't know you know Dom. That's awesome.
Yeah, good friends. Yeah. Thanks again, Joe. We'll talk to you, man.
Yep. Have a good one. Thank you.
Take care. And that's the end of this episode of Wrestling Changed My Life. Thank you so much for tuning in. To watch the full video interview, go to YouTube, Wrestling Changed My Life. And that's it. We'll see you next time.